was the kind of student who disappeared into the background of every classroom. He was 17 years old, thin as a stick, and wore the same oversized gray hoodie every single day. His glasses were always sliding down his nose, and he kept his head low whenever he walked through the hallways of high school. Most students did not even know his name. Teachers sometimes forgot he was sitting in their classrooms, had perfected the art of being invisible, and he preferred it that way. His life at home was complicated. His mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and pay the rent for their small apartment on the east side of the city. His father had left when was only 7 years old, and he never came back. Had learned early in life that he needed to take care of himself. He cooked his own meals, washed his own clothes, and spent most evenings alone while his mother worked late shifts at the hospital and the grocery store. The only thing that made Feel alive was basketball, but nobody knew about this secret passion of his. Every night after finishing his homework, would sneak out to the old basketball court behind the abandoned community center 3 blocks from his apartment. The court was cracked and broken, with weeds growing through the concrete and a rusty hoop that tilted slightly to the left. But it was paradise. He would play alone for hours under the flickering streetlight, practicing shots, working on his dribbling, and imagining himself playing in front of thousands of cheering fans. Had taught himself everything he knew about basketball by watching videos on the old laptop his mother had found at a garage sale. He studied the moves of professional players, rewinding the same clips hundreds of times until he understood exactly how they moved their feet, positioned their hands, and timed their jumps. Then he would go to that broken court and practice until his legs burned and his lungs screamed for air. Night after night, year after year, trained in complete secrecy. At school, nobody would have guessed that had any athletic ability at all. He avoided the gymnasium like it was infected with a deadly disease. During physical education classes, he always found excuses to sit on the bench. He would claim he had a headache or a stomach problem. Sometimes he would simply hide in the library until the class was over. The PE teacher, Coach Bradley, had given up trying to get to participate. He just marked him present and let him disappear. Coach was a former college basketball player who now taught physical education and coached the school's basketball team, the Eagles. He was a large man with broad shoulders and a voice that could shake the walls when he shouted. Most students respected him, but some were afraid of him. He had a habit of making fun of students he considered weak or lazy. He believed that tough love and public embarrassment were effective teaching methods. Many students had felt the sting of his sharp comments over the years. The Eagles were preparing for the most important game of the season. They were going to face their biggest rivals, the Lincoln High Lions, in the regional championship finals. The whole school was buzzing with excitement. Posters covered every wall and students talked about nothing else. The Eagles had a strong team led by their star player, Williams. Everything was not. He was tall, confident, popular, and talented. He walked through the hallways like he owned the school and everyone admired him. But there was a problem. 2 of the Eagles' best players had gotten injured during practice just 1 week before the big game. Another player had been suspended for failing his classes. Coach was desperate. He needed to find replacement players quickly, but most of the skilled students were already on the team or had other commitments. The situation looked hopeless. One afternoon, Coach was walking through the school, feeling frustrated and angry about the upcoming game. He passed by the library and happened to glance through the window. There sat, alone at a table, reading a book about basketball history. Coach stopped and stared. A cruel smile slowly spread across his face. An idea had formed in his mind, and it was not a kind one. The next day, during physical education class, Coach made an announcement that would change everything. He said that he was looking for students to fill in for the injured players on the basketball team. He said anyone could try out, even students who had never played before. Then his eyes found, sitting in his usual spot on the bench, trying to make himself as small as possible. Coach pointed directly at and said his name loudly so everyone could hear. He told to stand up, felt his face turn red as every student in the gymnasium turned to look at him. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. He wanted to run away, but his legs would not move. The coach walked over with that same cruel smile on his face. He announced to the entire class that was going to try out for the basketball team. The gymnasium erupted in laughter. Students pointed at and made jokes about how he would probably trip over his own feet. Some students said he would be knocked over by a gentle breeze. Others made comments about his skinny arms and his glasses. Wanted to disappear into the floor. He wanted to explain that he did not want to try out, that he was happy being invisible, that they should just leave him alone. But Coach was not asking. He was telling. The coach grabbed by the arm and pulled him toward the center of the gymnasium where a basketball was waiting. Coach announced that they were going to have a little demonstration. He said was going to show everyone his basketball skills right here and right now. The laughter grew louder. Williams and his friends were standing in a group, grinning and whispering to each other. They were expecting a comedy show, a chance to laugh at the weird, quiet kid who never talked to anyone. Stood in the center of the gymnasium, surrounded by the echoing laughter of his classmates. The basketball sat on the floor in front of him like a challenge. Coach crossed his arms and told to pick up the ball and show them what he could do. His voice was dripping with sarcasm. He clearly expected nothing but failure and humiliation. For a moment considered just walking away. He could accept the embarrassment, take the failing grade in PE and go back to his invisible life. That would be the safe choice. That would be the easy choice. But something inside him snapped. Years of loneliness, years of being overlooked and forgotten, years of practicing alone on that broken court in the darkness, all of it came rushing to the surface like a wave. Was tired of hiding. He was tired of being afraid. He was tired of letting other people decide who he was and what he could do. Bent down and picked up the basketball. It felt familiar in his hands, like an old friend he had not seen in a while. The laughter continued around him, but was no longer listening. His mind had gone to that quiet place he found on the court every night. The world around him faded away until there was nothing left but him and the ball and the hoop at the far end of the gymnasium. He took a deep breath and began to move. The moment touched the basketball, something changed in him. His body remembered thousands of hours of practice, thousands of shots taken under the flickering streetlight, thousands of movements repeated until they became as natural as breathing. He dribbled the ball once, twice, feeling its familiar bounce against the polished gymnasium floor. The laughter around him began to fade, replaced by confused silence. Started moving across the court with the ball. His first crossover was so quick and smooth that it looked like the ball had teleported from one hand to the other. The students watching let out a collective gasp. Nobody had expected this. Nobody had imagined that the skinny, quiet kid in the oversized hoodie could move like that. He accelerated toward the basket, his feet dancing across the floor in a pattern that seemed almost choreographed. When Williams stepped forward to block his path, thinking he could easily stop this nobody, executed a spin move that left standing in place, looking foolish and confused. The entire gymnasium went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Reached the basket and launched himself into the air. His body what everyone thought was possible for someone so thin and small. He rose higher than anyone expected, his arm extending toward the rim with perfect form. The ball left his hand and swooshed through the net without touching the rim. A perfect shot. A beautiful shot. For several seconds, nobody made a sound. Coach stood frozen with his mouth hanging open. His cruel smile had vanished, replaced by an expression of pure shock and disbelief. The students who had been laughing moments ago were now staring at like they were seeing him for the very first time. Then did something even more unexpected. He did not stop after that one shot. He retrieved the ball and began a demonstration that would be talked about for years at high school. He moved back to the three-point line and drained shot after shot, barely pausing between releases. Each ball arced through the air and found the net with mechanical precision. 5 shots in a row, 10 shots in a row, 15 shots without a single miss. Students began to murmur among themselves. Some pulled out their phones and started recording. Others just watched with their mouths hanging open, unable to process what they were witnessing. This was not supposed to happen. This weird, invisible kid was not supposed to be able to do this. Moved to demonstrate his dribbling skills next. He bounced the ball between his legs behind his back, around his body in patterns so complex that they looked like magic tricks. The ball seemed attached to his hand by an invisible string. He moved it at different speeds, sometimes slow and hypnotic, sometimes so fast it blurred. Even Coach, who had played college basketball and coached for 20 years, had rarely seen ball handling this skilled. When finally stopped and stood in the center of the gymnasium holding the basketball, the silence lasted for what felt like an eternity. Then someone started clapping. It was a single person at first, a girl named Sarah who sat in the back of the class and had always felt sorry for how people treated. Her clapping echoed through the gymnasium, lonely but brave. Then another person joined in, and another, and another. Within seconds, the entire gymnasium exploded in applause and cheering. Students who had laughed at minutes before were now standing on their feet, clapping their hands and shouting their approval. Some were calling his name, a name they had not even known until today. William stood apart from the crowd, his face twisted in a complicated expression. He was the star of the basketball team, the most popular athlete in school, and he had just watched some nobody show skills that might even exceed his own. His pride was wounded, but there was something else in his eyes too. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. It might have been both. Coach finally recovered from his shock and walked toward. His entire demeanor had changed. Gone was the cruel coach who had wanted to humiliate a student. In his place was a basketball coach who had just discovered hidden treasure. His eyes were bright with excitement and possibility. The coach asked where he had learned to play like that. His voice was almost trembling. Looked at him for a long moment before answering. He said he had taught himself by watching videos and practicing alone at night. He said he had been playing on the old court behind the abandoned community center for 7 years. Coach could not believe what he was hearing. 7 years of secret training. 7 years of dedication and hard work that nobody knew about. This skinny, quiet kid had built himself into a skilled basketball player without any coaching, without any teammates, without any encouragement from anyone. The coach asked why he had never tried out for the team. Why had he hidden this incredible talent? Why had he let everyone think he was just some weak kid who could not play sports? The questions tumbled out of Coach like water from a broken dam. Took his time answering. He said he did not like attention. He said he did not think anyone would want him on the team because he was not popular or cool. He said basketball was his private escape, something that belonged only to him in those quiet, dark nights on the broken court. He had been afraid that if other people knew about it, they would somehow take it away from him or ruin it. The gymnasium had grown quiet again as spoke. Students were listening to his words, really listening, maybe for the first time ever. They were seeing as a real person with feelings and fears, and a whole hidden life they had never bothered to notice. Coach put his hand on shoulder and made a decision right then and there. He told that he wanted him on the team, not as a backup player, not as someone who would sit on the bench, but as a real member of the Eagles who would play in the championship game against Lincoln High. The coach said had something special, something that could not be taught. He said had raw talent and obvious dedication, and those were the foundations of greatness. The students erupted in noise again, discussing what they had just witnessed and what this meant for the big game. Phones were buzzing as people texted their friends who were not in class. Videos of his performance were already being uploaded to social media. By the end of the day, everyone in the school would know about the quiet kid who had shocked everyone with his basketball skills. But not everyone was happy about this development. Williams watched from across the gymnasium as Coach talked too. Had worked his entire life to be the star of the basketball team. He had attended expensive camps, hired private coaches, and dedicated countless hours to becoming the best. And now some random kid who had taught himself basketball was suddenly being treated like a discovery of gold. His friends gathered around him, asking if he had seen what happened, asking what he thought about joining the team. Forced a smile and said it was cool, that the team needed help anyway. But inside, a fire of jealousy was beginning to burn. He was not going to let some nobody take his spotlight, not without a fight. Stood alone after coach walked away to deal with other students. He was still holding the basketball, still processing what had just happened. His secret was out. His invisible life was over. Everything was about to change, and he did not know if that was a good thing or a terrifying thing. A girl approached him. It was Sarah, the one who had started the clapping. She smiled at him and said that was amazing. She asked him how long he had been hiding that talent, shrugged and said he was not hiding it exactly. He just never thought anyone would care. Sarah laughed and said that everyone cared now. She said his video was probably already spreading across the entire school. She said by tomorrow would be the most talked about person at High. Felt a strange mixture of emotions, pride and fear, excitement and anxiety, hope and doubt. His life had changed in just a few minutes and he had no idea what would come next. He only knew that there was no going back to being invisible. Whether he liked it or not had finally been seen. The next morning, woke up to find that his world had completely transformed overnight. His phone, which usually received no messages except from his mother, was flooded with notifications. Dozens of friend requests on social media. Hundreds of comments on the videos from the gymnasium. Messages from students he had never spoken to, all wanting to talk to him, congratulate him, or ask him questions about his basketball skills. Sat on his bed in the small room he shared with stacks of old books and second-hand furniture. He scrolled through the messages with wide eyes, unable to believe what he was reading. People were calling him a hidden genius. They were comparing him to professional players. They were saying that High was going to win the championship because of him. His mother appeared at his bedroom door, looking tired from her night shift but also curious. She asked him why his phone would not stop buzzing. Did not know how to explain what had happened. He had never told his mother about his secret basketball practice. She knew he liked watching basketball games on television, but she had no idea he spent every night training on a broken court in a dangerous part of the neighborhood. Took a deep breath and told his mother everything. He told her about the 7 years of practice, the videos he watched to learn techniques, the countless hours he had spent alone perfecting his skills. He told her about what happened in the gymnasium, how the coach had tried to humiliate him, and how he had shocked everyone instead. He told her that the coach wanted him to join the team and play in the championship game. His mother listened without interrupting. When finished speaking, she was quiet for a long moment. Then tears began to roll down her cheeks, felt his heart sink. He thought he had upset her, that she was angry about his secret or worried about the dangers of him sneaking out at night. But when his mother finally spoke, her voice was full of pride, not anger. She said she could not believe her son had taught himself to play basketball that well. She said she was sorry she had been working so much that she never noticed what he was doing. She said she was proud of him, so incredibly proud, and that his father would be proud too if he could see what kind of young man had become. Hugged his mother tightly. They stayed like that for several minutes, two people who had been through so much hardship together, finally sharing a moment of pure joy and hope. His mother said she would try to get time off work to watch the championship game. She said she would not miss it for anything in the world. When arrived at school that day, everything was different. People who had ignored him for years were suddenly greeting him in the hallways. Students he had never met knew his name. Girls smiled at him and waved. Boys slapped him on the back and told him he was awesome. It was overwhelming and strange and slightly terrifying for someone who had spent his entire life trying not to be noticed. The videos from the gymnasium had spread far beyond high school. They had been shared on local news websites and sports blogs. A reporter from the city newspaper had called the school asking for an interview with the mysterious basketball prodigy who had been hiding in plain sight. Coach was handling the media attention like it was the best thing that had ever happened to him, even though he had originally tried to humiliate. During lunch, sat at a table in the cafeteria and found himself surrounded by people. Students pulled up chairs and squeezed in around him, all wanting to talk, all wanting to be seen with the new school celebrity. Among them was Sarah, who had started the clapping the day before. She sat across from and smiled at him in a way that made his face feel warm. Sarah asked how he was handling all the attention, admitted that it was a lot to process. He said he had spent years being invisible, and now suddenly everyone wanted to be his friend. He said he was not sure which ones actually cared about him, and which ones just wanted to be close to someone famous. Sarah nodded with understanding. She said that was a smart way to think about it. She said most people were probably just excited about the big game and wanted to feel connected to someone who might help the team win. But she said she thought it was amazing what had done, not just the basketball skills, but the dedication and the courage to keep working so hard without anyone knowing or encouraging him. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Williams. The star player sat down at the table without asking, pushing his way into the center of attention. He greeted with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He said he had watched the videos and that had some nice moves. He said he was looking forward to playing together on the team. Thanked him and said he was looking forward to it too, but there was something in his tone that felt wrong. It was like there were words underneath his words, meanings hidden behind his friendly surface. Had spent years observing people from the shadows, and he could tell when someone was not being genuine. Mentioned that the team had practice after school. He said should come and see how the Eagles really played. He said gymnasium demonstrations were one thing, but actual game situations were completely different. He said the real test would be whether could handle the pressure of playing against trained athletes who would not just stand there and let him show off. The challenge in his words was clear, even though he was smiling while he said them. Some of the other students at the table exchanged uncomfortable glances. They could sense the tension too. Sarah looked at with concern in her eyes, silently asking if he was okay. Met's gaze and held it. He said he would be at practice. He said he was ready to show what he could do against anyone. Something passed between them in that moment, a silent understanding that this was not just about basketball. This was about territory and status and pride. Had been the king of this school, and now there was someone threatening his throne. After school, walked into the gymnasium where the Eagles were gathering for practice. The other players looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. They had all seen the videos, but videos could be deceiving. Anyone could look good in a controlled situation. The real question was whether could perform under pressure. Coach welcomed to the team with excessive enthusiasm. He announced to everyone that would be joining their starting lineup for the championship game. This announcement caused a stir among the players. Starting lineup was reserved for the best players and had not even practiced with the team yet. It seemed unfair to some of them, especially to close friends who had worked hard all season. Suggested they have a scrimmage to see what could do. His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. He said it would be good for the team to understand playing style before the big game. Coach agreed that it was a good idea. The players divided into two teams, was placed on the opposite team from which everyone understood was intentional. This was going to be a showdown, a test of skills between the established star and the unknown newcomer. The other players were almost secondary characters in this drama. As took his position on the court, he felt the familiar calm settle over him. This was his world, the world he had created for himself on that broken court in the darkness. These were bigger and stronger opponents than he had ever faced, but the fundamentals were the same. The ball was the same. The basket was the same. and despite his quiet exterior, had a competitor's heart that was ready to prove itself. The whistle blew, and the scrimmage began. The scrimmage started fast and physical. Williams immediately took control of the ball and drove toward the basket with aggressive power. His movements were strong and confident, the moves of someone who had been trained by professional coaches and had played in competitive games for years. He scored easily on his first possession, then turned to look at with a challenging smile. Understood what was happening. This was not just practice. This was a message, was showing everyone that he was still the alpha, still the best player on this team, and that some skinny kid with viral videos was not going to change that fact. When got the ball on the next possession, guarded him personally. He pressed up close, using his bigger body to push and intimidate. He talked trash quietly, saying things that only could hear. He said should go back to hiding in the library. He said viral videos did not mean anything in real basketball. He said would embarrass himself when he faced real competition. Did not respond with words. He responded with his feet. He executed a quick step-back move that created space between him and, before could recover, released a jump shot that sailed through the air and swished through the net. Perfect form, perfect execution. The other players made sounds of appreciation despite themselves. His face tightened with frustration. He had underestimated how quick could move and how accurate his shooting was. On the next possession, he tried to score on, expecting to overpower him with physicality, but anticipated the move and stripped the ball cleanly from his hands. The steal was so quick and precise that was left standing with empty hands, looking confused. Took the stolen ball and drove to the basket. Two defenders converged on him, thinking they had him trapped, but split between them with a move so smooth it looked choreographed. He finished with a layup that kissed off the backboard and dropped through the net. The other players were now watching with genuine respect. This was not just showing off. This was real basketball skill being demonstrated against real opposition. The scrimmage continued for another 30 minutes and continued to impress. He did not dominate every single play, was still an excellent player who scored plenty of points and made several impressive moves, but held his own against the best player in the school, and in some moments he clearly outplayed him. By the end of the scrimmage, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that belonged on this team. Coach ended practice with a team meeting. He talked about the upcoming championship game against Lincoln High. He said this was the biggest game in the school's recent history. He said they had a real chance to win the regional title for the first time in 15 years. He said joining the team was exactly what they needed, a spark of unexpected talent that could give them an edge. Sat silently during the coach's speech, his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the floor. His friends on the team exchanged glances but said nothing. Everyone could feel the tension, but nobody wanted to address it directly. The team needed to come together if they wanted to win, but right now they were divided by jealousy and resentment. After practice, stayed behind to shoot some extra baskets by himself. The gymnasium was quiet and empty, and he enjoyed the familiar peace of being alone with the ball. He was practicing his free throws when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to find walking toward him. Stopped a few feet away and stood with his arms crossed. His expression was different now, less hostile but more serious. He said they needed to talk, nodded and waited. Admitted that he had been trying to show up during the scrimmage. He said he was jealous and threatened and afraid of losing his position as the star of the team. He said he had worked his entire life for basketball, attended elite camps, hired personal trainers, and sacrificed everything to be the best, and then had appeared out of nowhere with no formal training and made him look average. Listened without interrupting. He understood what was feeling. It was natural to feel threatened when someone challenged your position. It was human to be jealous of talent that seemed to come easily to others. When finished speaking, said something that surprised both of them. He said he did not want to take place. He said he did not care about being the star or getting all the attention. He said he just loved playing basketball, and he wanted to help the team win. He said there was room for both of them to shine, and they would be much more dangerous together than they would be competing against each other. Was quiet for a long moment, processing words. Then his expression softened slightly. He said was either incredibly humble or incredibly smart. He said most people in his position would be trying to take over the spotlight completely. Shrugged and said the spotlight was never why he played. He played because the game made him feel alive. Extended his hand and shook it. It was not exactly friendship yet, but it was a truce. They agreed to work together for the good of the team, at least until the championship game was over. What happened after that would depend on how things went. The next few days were intense. Practiced with the team every afternoon, learning their plays and adjusting to their style. He was a quick learner who adapted easily to new situations. The other players began to accept him, won over by his skills and his humble attitude. Evan's friends admitted that was not as bad as they had expected. News about continued to spread beyond the school. A local television station sent a reporter to interview him. The story of the quiet kid who taught himself basketball and shocked everyone was perfect for the news. It was inspiring and unexpected and made people feel good. The interview aired during the evening news and suddenly was not just a school celebrity. He was a local celebrity. Found all the attention exhausting. He was not comfortable being on camera or answering questions from reporters. He gave short answers and avoided making eye contact with the journalists. His natural shyness had not disappeared just because he had revealed his basketball talent. He was still the same quiet person inside, just with more eyes watching him. Sarah became his refuge during this overwhelming time. She sought him out between classes and during lunch, providing calm conversation and genuine friendship. Unlike others who wanted to talk about basketball constantly, Sarah asked about his life, his interests, his dreams. She wanted to know the person, not the basketball phenomenon. Found himself opening up to Sarah in ways he had never opened up to anyone. He told her about his father leaving, about his mother's constant work, about the loneliness that had defined most of his life. He told her that basketball had been his escape from a world that felt cold and indifferent. He told her that the broken court behind the community center had been more of a home to him than his actual apartment. Sarah listened with genuine compassion. She shared her own struggles with him. Her parents had impossibly high expectations and constantly compared her to her more successful older siblings. She felt like she was never good enough, no matter how hard she tried. She said that watching in the gymnasium had inspired her because he proved that you could become something amazing even without perfect circumstances or support. As the championship game approached, felt more prepared than he had expected. He had teammates who respected him, a coach who believed in him, and a friend who truly cared about him. He had gone from complete isolation to being surrounded by people who wanted him to succeed. But also knew that the real test was still coming. Playing in practice was one thing. Playing in a championship game in front of hundreds of screaming fans with everything on the line was something completely different. He would find out soon enough if his years of secret training had prepared him for the biggest moment of his life. The night before the championship game, returned to the old basketball court behind the abandoned community center. He had not been there since his secret was revealed. The court looked exactly the same, cracked concrete and rusted hoop tilting slightly to the left. The streetlight still flickered in its irregular rhythm, but everything felt different now. Stood in the center of the court and looked up at the sky. Stars were visible through the gaps in the clouds, tiny points of light in the vast darkness. He thought about all the nights he had spent on this court, alone and unknown, dreaming of something more. He had never imagined that his dreams would actually come true. He pulled a basketball from his backpack and began to shoot. The familiar motions calmed his nervous mind. The ball left his hands and found the net, over and over, the sound of the swish as soothing as a lullaby. This was where he had become who he was. This was where had transformed himself from a forgotten nobody into someone capable of amazing things. A noise behind him made turn quickly. A figure was emerging from the shadows, walking toward the court. For a moment, felt a flash of fear. This was not the safest neighborhood, and he was alone in the dark. But then the figure stepped into the light of the and felt his heart stop for a completely different reason. It was his father. Had not seen his father in 10 years. The man looked older, thinner, with gray in his hair and deep lines in his face. But it was unmistakably him. The same eyes that saw in the mirror every morning. The same shape of the jaw and the ears. Father and son stood staring at each other across the broken basketball court. His father spoke first. He said he had seen on the news. He said he could not believe what his son had become. He said he had been following the story from afar, watching the videos, reading the articles. He said he was proud, so incredibly proud. Did not know what to feel. A storm of emotions was churning inside him. Anger at being abandoned, sadness at the lost years, confusion about why his father was here now. And somewhere beneath all of that, a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. His father tried to explain why he had left. He said he had been young and scared and not ready to be a parent. He said he had made a terrible mistake that he had regretted every day since. He said he had wanted to come back many times but felt like he had lost the right to be part of his son's life. He said seeing succeed against all odds had finally given him the courage to face his son again. Stood silently through his father's explanation. When it was over, he did not rush to forgive. He did not embrace his father with tears of joy. He simply said that he had a big game tomorrow and needed to focus. He said if his father wanted to be part of his life, it would take more than words. It would take time and effort and proving that he would not disappear again. His father nodded with understanding. He said he would be at the game tomorrow, watching from the stands. He said he would be there to support his son, even from a distance. He said he would earn his way back into life, however long it took. After his father disappeared back into the shadows, continued shooting baskets until his arms were tired and his mind was clear. The emotional encounter had thrown him off balance, but he would not let it affect his performance tomorrow. He had worked too hard and come too far to let anything distract him from the championship game. The next morning, woke up feeling strangely calm. The nervous energy that had been building all week had transformed into focused determination. He ate a good breakfast, hugged his mother who was taking the day off to watch him play, and headed to school for the pregame team meeting. The school gymnasium had been transformed for the championship. Extra bleachers had been set up to accommodate the expected crowd. Banners and posters covered every surface, declaring support for the Eagles. Local television cameras were being positioned along the sidelines to broadcast the game live. The energy in the building was electric. Coach gathered the team in the locker room for a final talk before the game. He spoke about the importance of the moment, about all the hard work that had led to this day, about the chance to make history for high school. He said they were underdogs going against a stronger and more experienced Lincoln High team. But he said underdogs won all the time when they played with heart and determination. The coach looked at and said something that surprised everyone. He said was the perfect example of what was possible when someone refused to accept limitations. He said had taught himself to play basketball at an elite level without any resources or support, simply because he loved the game and was willing to work harder than anyone else. He said if the team could channel that same spirit today, nothing could stop them. Williams nodded in agreement. Whatever jealousy he had felt earlier was gone now, replaced by team unity and competitive fire. He said was right that there was room for both of them to shine. He said they were going to work together and show Lincoln High what they were made of. The team huddled together and did their pregame chant. Hands stacked in the center, voices rising in unison. Felt a warmth in his chest that he had never experienced before. He was part of something bigger than himself. He was part of a team, a brotherhood of players united by a common goal. The gymnasium was packed when the Eagles ran onto the court for warm-ups. The crowd erupted in cheers that shook the building, looked up into the stands and saw his mother waving excitedly from her seat. A few rows behind her, he spotted his father, watching with an expression of intense hope. On the other side of the gymnasium, he saw Sarah holding a homemade sign that said his name in big, colorful letters. The Lincoln High Lions were already warming up on their half of the court. They were big and athletic and moved with the confidence of a team that expected to win. Their star player, a tall senior named James Mitchell, was putting on a show with impressive dunks that drew reactions from the crowd. Lincoln High had won the regional championship 3 years in a row, and they clearly intended to make it 4. Focused on his own warm-up routine, he drained shot after shot, finding his rhythm and settling his nerves. The other Eagles warmed up around him, each player dealing with the pressure in their own way. Coach stood on the sidelines, clipboard in hand, making final adjustments to the game plan. The referee blew the whistle to signal that warm-ups were over. The starting lineups were announced, and felt his heart pound as his name echoed through the gymnasium. This was it, the moment he had been unknowingly preparing for during 7 years of secret practice. The moment that would show whether could perform when everything was on the line. The two teams took their positions for the opening tip-off. Stood opposite his defensive assignment, a quick guard named Tyler Brooks who had a reputation for excellent defense. They made eye contact and nodded at each other with mutual respect. The game was about to begin. The referee tossed the ball into the air between the two centers. Bodies jumped and hands reached, and the ball was tipped toward the Lincoln High side. The championship game had officially started, and the next 2 hours would determine the fate of both teams. Lincoln High came out aggressive from the opening possession. They pushed the pace, moved the ball quickly, and tested the Eagles' defense immediately. James Mitchell scored on a powerful drive to the basket, drawing a foul and converting the three-point play. The Lincoln fans roared with approval. The message was clear. The 3-time champions were not intimidated by any viral video sensation. The Eagles responded with their own attack. Williams took control of the ball and worked through the Lincoln defense with practiced skill. He found an open teammate for an easy layup, answering Lincoln's score and settling the nerves of the crowd. The game settled into a competitive rhythm, both teams trading baskets and neither able to build a significant lead. Got his first touch of the ball 3 possessions into the game. The moment his hands made contact with the leather, he felt the thousands of hours of practice rushing back to him. Tyler Brooks was guarding him tightly, determined to shut down the newcomer everyone was talking about. Dribbled patiently, reading the defense, waiting for an opportunity. He saw cutting toward the basket and delivered a perfect pass through 2 defenders, caught the ball in stride and finished with a layup that brought the crowd to their feet. Had not scored, but he had made his presence felt. Basketball was not just about individual stats. It was about making your teammates better. As the first quarter progressed, began to take more shots. His first attempt was a 3-pointer that rattled around the rim and fell out. The Lincoln bench cheered and Tyler Brooks smiled with satisfaction, but did not let the miss affect his confidence. He had missed thousands of shots in his life, and he had always responded by making the next one. His second shot was a mid-range jumper that swished through the net. His third was a 3-pointer from the corner that found nothing but the bottom of the net. His fourth was a driving layup through contact that somehow went in despite being fouled. The crowd was chanting his name, and the Lincoln players were beginning to realize that the viral videos had not been exaggerated. By the end of the first quarter, the score was tied at 18 points each, had scored 8 points, and had scored 6. James Mitchell had dominated for Lincoln with 10 points of his own. It was shaping up to be exactly the competitive battle everyone had hoped for. The second quarter saw both teams making adjustments. Lincoln's coach put extra defensive attention on, sometimes assigning 2 players to guard him. This opened up opportunities for and the other Eagles to attack the basket. The game became a chess match, each team trying to find weaknesses in the other's strategy. Found himself struggling against the double teams. He made a few turnovers when the pressure got to him, throwing passes into traffic that were intercepted by quick Lincoln defenders. Coach called a timeout and pulled aside. He told to trust his teammates more. He said when the defense collapsed on him, it meant someone else was open. He said basketball was about reading the situation and making the right play, not forcing difficult shots. Nodded and returned to the court with an adjusted mindset. The next time Lincoln sent two defenders at him, he immediately found the open man. The pass led to an easy basket. The time after that, he drew the defense and kicked the ball to a teammate in the corner for an open three-pointer. Swish. The Eagles were learning to use talent as a weapon, whether he was scoring or not. The first half ended with leading by 4 points, 36-32. It was a small advantage, but it was an advantage nonetheless. The Eagles retreated to the locker room feeling confident but knowing the game was far from over. Lincoln High had been in difficult situations before and had always found a way to win. Coach used the halftime break to make tactical adjustments. He drew up new plays designed to exploit Lincoln's defensive weaknesses. He told the players to be patient on offense and aggressive on defense. He reminded them that the second half was when champions were made. Anyone could play well for 16 minutes. True greatness required playing well for 32. The third quarter was brutal. Lincoln came out with renewed intensity, determined to erase the deficit and take control of the game. James Mitchell was unstoppable, scoring 12 points in the quarter on a variety of difficult shots. The Lincoln defense clamped down on the Eagles, forcing contested shots and turnovers. By the end of the third quarter, Lincoln had taken the lead, 51-47. Was frustrated with himself. He had been held to only 4 points in the third quarter, well below his average. The double teams were bothering him more than he wanted to admit. His inexperience in real game situations was showing. Playing alone on a broken court at night had not prepared him for the physical and mental challenges of championship basketball. Sarah caught his eye from the stands during a brief break in action. She smiled at him and gave him a thumbs up, her belief in him radiating across the gymnasium. Felt something shift inside him. He remembered why he had started playing basketball in the first place. It was not for wins or losses or statistics. It was for the love of the game, for the way it made him feel alive, for the escape it provided from a difficult world. Took a deep breath and released the pressure he had been putting on himself. He stopped trying to be perfect. He stopped worrying about what everyone expected from him. He went back to being the kid on the broken court, playing for the pure joy of it, moving with instinct rather than overthinking. The fourth quarter began and was a different player. He attacked the basket with fearless aggression, absorbing contact from bigger defenders and finishing through the punishment. He hit a three-pointer from well beyond the arc, a shot so deep that even his own teammates were surprised. He made a steal on defense and drove the length of the court for a layup that tied the game. The momentum had shifted. The crowd was on their feet, sensing that something special was happening. Williams fed off the energy, hitting clutch shots of his own. The two players who had been rivals just days ago were now working together like they had played together for years. With 2 minutes left in the game, the score was tied at 64. Both teams were exhausted from the physical battle, but neither was willing to give an inch. Every possession felt like life and death. Every shot felt like it could decide the championship. Lincoln ran a play for James Mitchell, their most reliable scorer. He caught the ball on the wing and made his move toward the basket, rotated over to help on defense, positioning himself between Mitchell and the rim. Mitchell went up for a layup and jumped with him, timing his leap perfectly. Their bodies collided in the air, and the ball was knocked away by his outstretched hand. The block sent the crowd into absolute chaos. Had just made the defensive play of the game against the best player on the floor. His teammates mobbed him with celebration before quickly returning their focus to the game. There was still work to be done. The Eagles took possession with 90 seconds left on the clock and the score still tied. Coach called a timeout to draw up what could be the most important play of the entire season. The players huddled around him, sweat dripping from their faces, chests heaving with exhaustion and adrenaline. The coach designed a play that would give Williams the first option. He was the team's leading scorer and the most experienced player in clutch situations. Would be the second option if was covered. The other players would set screens and create space for the main threats to operate. As listened to the play, caught his eye and gave him a subtle nod. There was an understanding between them now. Whatever personal conflicts they had experienced were forgotten. They were teammates fighting together for something bigger than individual glory. The Eagles broke their huddle and returned to the court. The crowd noise was deafening as both sets of fans tried to will their team to victory. Could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. His hands were steady, though. His mind was clear. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The inbound pass went to, who dribbled across half-court with controlled urgency. The play unfolded exactly as coach had designed. Came off a screen and received the ball in position for his favorite mid-range shot. Lincoln's defense scrambled to contest and had a decision to make. He could have taken the shot. It was a decent look, maybe 40% chance of going in, but saw something that changed his mind. Had gotten free on the weak side of the court, his defender caught behind a screen. Made the unselfish play, whipping a pass across the court to his teammate. Caught the ball in his shooting pocket, his feet already set for the shot. Tyler Brooks was racing toward him, hand extended to contest. Time seemed to slow down as rose into the air. He could see his mother in the stands, tears streaming down her face. He could see his father, hands clasped together in prayer. He could see Sarah, her homemade sign forgotten as she watched with held breath. The ball left his hands with perfect rotation. It arced through the air, tracing a path that felt inevitable. The gymnasium fell silent as thousands of eyes followed the ball's flight. Tyler Brooks landed from his contest, unable to do anything but watch. The ball hit the back of the rim, bounced high into the air, and came down on the front of the rim. For one terrible moment, it looked like it would roll off and fall away. But then it dropped through the net with a soft swish that released all the tension in the building. The side erupted with joy. Was immediately surrounded by his teammates, bodies crushing together in celebration. They were leading by 2 points with less than a minute to play. The impossible dream was suddenly within reach. But the game was not over yet. Lincoln High called a quick timeout and set up their own play for the final possession. They had enough time to run a play, and if they scored, the game would either be tied or they could take the lead depending on whether they got a 2-point or 3-point shot. Coach told his players to defend hard without fouling. He said to force Lincoln into a difficult shot and trust their defensive abilities. He said the championship was theirs to lose now, and he believed in them completely. The Lincoln coach designed a play for James Mitchell, their best player and their best hope. The inbound pass found its target, and Mitchell began his attack. He dribbled toward the basket with defending him closely. Mitchell made a move to the right, then crossed over to the left, creating just enough space to rise for a jump shot. Saw what was happening and rotated to help. He left his own man and flew toward Mitchell, knowing that if he missed the contest, Lincoln might get an open shot elsewhere, but trusted his instincts. He trusted the thousands of hours of practice that had trained his body to react without thinking. Mitchell released his shot just as arrived. The ball brushed against fingertips, not enough to block it completely, but enough to alter its trajectory. The shot went up, looking good at first, but then drifting slightly to the left. It clanked off the rim and bounced away. Players from both teams scrambled for the rebound. Bodies collided and hands reached for the ball. A Lincoln player got a hand on it and tried to put up a desperation shot, but the ball was swatted away by one of the Eagles' big men. The ball bounced toward midcourt where Williams gathered it and clutched it to his chest. The final buzzer sounded. The game was over. High had won the regional championship 66-64. The gymnasium descended into beautiful chaos. Students poured onto the court, surrounding the players in a sea of celebration. The Eagles jumped up and down, hugged each other, and screamed with joy. Years of frustration and losing were washed away in this single moment of triumph. Found himself at the center of the celebration, hoisted onto his teammates' shoulders as the crowd chanted his name. He had scored 24 points, grabbed 6 rebounds, and made the defensive plays that sealed the victory. Just 1 week ago, nobody in this school knew his name. Now they were treating him like a hero. Through the chaos, spotted Williams pushing through the crowd toward him. When reached him, he grabbed in a fierce hug. He shouted in his ear that they did it, that they actually did it. His voice cracked with emotion. Whatever rivalry had existed between them was completely gone now, replaced by the bond of shared triumph. Coach found next. The same coach who had tried to humiliate him in front of the entire gymnasium was now looking at him with tears in his eyes. He told that he was sorry for how he had treated him at first. He said it taught him a valuable lesson about judging people too quickly. He said was the heart of this team, and the championship would not have been possible without him. Accepted the apology with grace. He said he understood that the coach had not meant to discover his talent. He said sometimes the best things in life came from unexpected places. He said he was grateful for the chance to prove himself, even if it had started as a cruel joke. The celebration continued for what felt like hours. Posed for photographs, gave interviews to reporters, and accepted congratulations from hundreds of people. Through it all, he searched the crowd for the faces that mattered most to him. He found his mother first, fighting through the crowd to reach her son. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. She just held him tightly and told him over and over how proud she was. Held her back, feeling the warmth of her love surrounding him. His father approached more hesitantly, staying at a distance until made eye contact with him. Saw the hope and regret in his father's eyes. He made a decision in that moment. He walked toward his father and embraced him for the first time in 10 years. It was not forgiveness exactly, but it was a beginning. It was a chance for them to build something new. Sarah waited patiently until had finished with his family. When he finally reached her, she threw her arms around his neck and kissed him on the cheek. She said she knew he could do it. She said she had believed in him from the very first moment she saw him in that gymnasium. Smiled and said he could not have done it without her support. As the gymnasium slowly emptied and the celebration wound down, stood alone on the court for a moment. He looked at the championship banner being hung from the rafters, at the confetti still scattered across the floor, at the scoreboard that still displayed the final score. This was real. This had actually happened. The quiet, invisible kid from the broken basketball court had become a champion. The days following the championship game were unlike anything had ever experienced. His story had captured the imagination of people far beyond high school. The video of his original gymnasium demonstration had already been viral, but now footage of his championship performance was spreading even faster. News outlets from across the state were requesting interviews. Sports analysts were discussing his talent on television. College basketball scouts were suddenly very interested in the unknown senior from a small public school. Returned to school as a genuine celebrity. Students who had ignored him for years now competed for his attention. Teachers praised him in class. The principal mentioned him in announcements. His photograph was displayed in the trophy case alongside images from the championship game. He had gone from invisible to unavoidable in the span of 2 weeks, but remained the same humble person he had always been. He did not let the attention change his personality or his values. He still wore his oversized gray hoodie. He still preferred quiet conversations over loud parties. He still spent time alone shooting baskets, though now he used the school gymnasium instead of the broken court behind the community center. Sarah became his closest companion during this overwhelming period. She helped him navigate the media attention and provided a calm presence when everything felt too chaotic. Their relationship had evolved from friendship into something deeper. They would take walks after school, talking about their dreams and fears and hopes for the future. Had never felt so connected to another person in his entire life. Williams surprised everyone by becoming one of strongest advocates. In interviews, he always credited for the championship victory. He told reporters that was the most naturally talented player he had ever seen. He said watching had made him want to work harder at his own game. The rivalry that could have destroyed their team had instead become a friendship that made both players better. The college scouts began arriving at high school in force. Representatives from programs across the country wanted to meet the young man everyone was talking about. Sat through meetings with coaches from major universities, listening to their pitches about scholarships and playing time and paths to professional basketball. It was overwhelming to have so many options after spending years believing he had none. His mother attended every meeting, asking questions and taking notes. She had never imagined that basketball could provide opportunities for her son's education. The thought of attending a major university on a full athletic scholarship filled her with pride and relief. All those nights when she had worried about how they would afford college suddenly seemed like worries about nothing. His father began attending games and visiting more regularly. Their relationship was still complicated, and healing would take time, but appreciated that his father was making an effort. They would shoot baskets together sometimes, talking about basketball and carefully avoiding the deeper wounds that still needed to be addressed. It was awkward, but it was progress. One evening, received an unexpected phone call. A coach from one of the most prestigious basketball programs in the country was on the line. He said he had watched every piece of footage available and was deeply impressed. He said had something special, a combination of skill and instinct that could not be taught. He said he wanted to offer a full scholarship to play for his program. Could hardly believe what he was hearing. This was a program that produced professional players every year. This was a chance to compete at the highest level of college basketball and possibly beyond. This was everything he had dreamed about during those lonely nights on the broken court, except he had never actually believed it could happen. He asked for time to think about the decision. The coach said he understood and would wait for his answer. After the call ended, sat in his small room and stared at the basketball sitting in the corner. That ball had been his only friend for so many years. Now it had opened doors he never knew existed. Talked to his mother about the offer. She was supportive but cautious. She reminded him that basketball was wonderful, but education was more important. She said he should choose a school where he could get a good degree, not just where he could play basketball. She said careers in sports were short, but careers in other fields could last a lifetime. He talked to, who was going through his own recruitment process, told to follow his heart. He said college basketball was an amazing experience, but it was also incredibly demanding. He said needed to choose a place where he would be happy, not just where he would get the most playing time. He talked to Sarah, who listened thoughtfully and then asked him what he wanted. Not what everyone else wanted for him, but what truly wanted for his own life. Realized he had never really thought about that question. He had spent so long trying to survive and escape that he had never actually imagined what thriving would look like. Thought about his journey from the forgotten kid in the oversized hoodie to the championship hero, receiving scholarship offers. He thought about the broken court where he had taught himself to play, about the videos he had studied for hours, about the determination that had kept him practicing night after night even when no one was watching. He had built himself into this person through pure will and dedication. The answer became clear to him. He wanted to keep playing basketball at the highest level possible. He wanted to see how far his talent could take him, but he also wanted to stay connected to his family and friends and the community that had finally embraced him. He wanted to honor the journey that had brought him here, not abandon it for something shinier. Made his decision and called the coach back. He expressed deep gratitude for the incredible offer. He explained that he had decided to accept a scholarship from a different program, one that was still excellent but closer to home. He said his mother needed him nearby, and he was not ready to move across the country yet. The coach was disappointed but respectful. He said the door would always be open if changed his mind. The school chose was a strong basketball program in the same state. He would be able to visit his mother on weekends and stay connected to the life he had built. Sarah was planning to attend a university in the same city, which made the decision even. They could continue their relationship while both pursuing their dreams. When announced his college commitment, the local community celebrated. He was staying close to home, staying loyal to the people who had watched him transform from nobody to somebody. The newspapers wrote stories about his humble choice, contrasting it with athletes who chased fame and money to distant places. Became an even bigger hero for choosing family over prestige. Graduation day arrived with the warmth of late spring. Walked across the stage to receive his diploma, surrounded by the same students who had laughed at him in the gymnasium not so long ago. Now they were cheering for him, proud to have been part of his remarkable story. Coach shook his hand and whispered congratulations. Williams waited at the end of the line to give him a celebratory hug. Looked out at the audience and saw his mother crying happy tears. He saw his father standing in the back, watching with pride and regret and hope. He saw Sarah smiling at him like he was the most wonderful person in the world. He had come so far from the lonely kid who had hidden in the library and practiced basketball in the dark. 3 years after that championship game, stood in the tunnel of a professional basketball arena, waiting to be introduced for the biggest game of his life. He had grown taller and stronger since high school, his body transformed by elite training and nutrition. But inside, he was still the same person who had taught himself basketball on a broken court in the darkness. His college career had exceeded every expectation. He had become a star player, leading his team to conference championships and national tournaments. Sports analysts called him one of the most talented players in college basketball. Scouts from professional teams had been watching him closely for years. When he declared for the professional draft after his junior year, he was selected in the first round by a team in a major city. Tonight was his debut in the professional league. Thousands of fans filled the arena, many wearing jerseys with his name on the back. Television cameras broadcast the game to millions of viewers around the world. The kid nobody had noticed was about to play basketball on the biggest stage in the world. His mother was in the stands, sitting in the best seats he could arrange for her. She had quit her second job when signed his professional contract. For the first time in her life, she did not have to worry about money. Had made sure of that. Taking care of his mother was the first thing he did when the money started coming in. His father was there too, sitting next to his mother in an arrangement that would have been impossible a few years earlier. Their relationship had slowly healed over time. Had learned to forgive, not because his father deserved it, but because holding onto anger was too heavy a burden to carry. They would never have the relationship they might have had, but they had built something meaningful from the ruins. Sarah watched from the stands as well, her engagement ring sparkling on her finger. She and had stayed together through college, their love growing deeper as they supported each other through challenges and celebrated each other's successes. She had graduated with honors and was building her own career while pursued his basketball dreams. They were partners in every sense of the word. Williams was in the arena that night, not as a player but as a fan. His own basketball career had ended with a knee injury during his sophomore year of college. The news had devastated him at first, but he had found a new path as a sports broadcaster. Tonight he was covering his debut for a local television station. In his pre-game report, he told viewers about the shy kid who had shocked everyone in a high school gymnasium and predicted great things for his former teammate and friend. Coach had traveled to watch the game as well. He had retired from teaching the year before, but he still followed his career with intense interest. He often told people that discovering was the highlight of his coaching career, conveniently leaving out the part about trying to humiliate him. Coach had learned his lesson about judging people too quickly. He ran youth basketball camps now, always looking for hidden talent in unexpected places. The announcer called his name, and he jogged onto the court to thunderous applause. The lights were blinding and the noise was overwhelming but felt strangely calm. He had played in front of big crowds before. He had faced pressure situations countless times. This was just another game, another chance to do what he loved. The game started fast and physical. Professional players were bigger, stronger, and faster than anyone had faced before. He made mistakes in the first quarter, missing shots he usually made and turning the ball over twice. The opposing fans tried to get in his head, chanting and jeering whenever he touched the ball. Some critics in the media had questioned whether he was ready for this level of competition. It looked like they might be right. But remembered all the obstacles he had overcome to reach this moment. He remembered being invisible. He remembered being laughed at. He remembered teaching himself basketball with nothing but determination and a broken hoop. If he had gotten through all of that, he could get through a difficult first quarter. In the second quarter, settled into his rhythm. He hit a three-pointer that silenced the opposing fans. He made a beautiful pass that led to an easy basket for a teammate. He played tough defense that forced a turnover. By halftime, he had scored 12 points and looked comfortable on the court. The rookie struggles were behind him. The second half was when truly announced his arrival to the professional basketball world. He scored 20 points in the final 2 quarters, making shots from everywhere on the court. He showed the same skills that had amazed his high school gymnasium, but now polished by years of elite training and competition. The crowd that had doubted him was now chanting his name with respect and admiration. His team won the game by 15 points, finished with 32 points, 8 assists, and 4 steals. It was one of the best debut performances in league history. Reporters surrounded him after the game, asking how it felt to play at this level, how he had prepared, what his goals were for the season. Answered their questions with the same quiet confidence he had always shown. Later that night, after the celebrations had ended and the arena had emptied, found a quiet moment alone. He pulled out his phone and looked at a photo he kept saved on the screen. It was a picture of the old basketball court behind the abandoned community center, taken on his last visit there before leaving for college. The cracked concrete and rusted hoop looked exactly the same as they always had. Thought about the 17-year-old kid who had practiced on that court every night, dreaming impossible dreams while the world ignored him. He wished he could go back and tell that kid that everything was going to work out. He wished he could say that the loneliness and struggle would lead somewhere beautiful. He wished he could promise that all the hard work would eventually pay off. But he realized that the kid on the broken court did not need to hear those words. That kid had already believed them. That kid had kept working and improving and refusing to give up, even when there was no evidence that success was possible. That kid had created this future through pure faith and determination. Had proven something important with his journey. He had proven that talent could exist in unexpected places and people. He had proven that dedication and hard work could overcome any obstacle. He had proven that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest gift, because it gave you the hunger to keep striving when others would quit. The teacher who had forced him to play as a joke had accidentally changed his life forever. What was meant to be humiliation had become revelation. The laughter of that gymnasium had transformed into the cheers of millions. A cruel moment had sparked an incredible journey that was still continuing and would continue for years to come. As walked out of the arena into the cool night air, he smiled to himself. Tomorrow there would be more practice, more games, more challenges to face, but tonight he would simply be grateful. Grateful for the broken court that had been his sanctuary. Grateful for the mother who had worked so hard to give him a chance. grateful for the friends and family who had supported him, grateful for every moment of the incredible story that had brought him from invisible nobody to professional basketball player. The kid from the broken court had made it, and he was just getting started.